What you are about to hear is not commentary, it is an assessment, a clear-eyed, operationally grounded strategic assessment of what just happened over Haifa, what it means for the balance of power in this region, and what every defense planner from Washington to Jerusalem to Riyadh needs to understand right now. I have spent decades studying how wars are fought, how they are won, and critically, how the assumptions that underpin military doctrine get tested in actual combat. What Iran demonstrated with the Kheibar Shekan missile system over Haifa is one of the most significant live combat revelations in modern missile warfare. And if you stay with me through this entire analysis, I am going to give you the full strategic picture, not just what happened, but why it happened, what it changes, and where this trajectory leads, because the implications extend far beyond Israel's northern coast. They reach into the command structures of every NATO ally, every American forward base in the Middle East, and every adversary that has been watching and taking notes. Let us start with the weapon itself, because understanding the Kheibar Shekan is essential to understanding the strategic moment we are now in. The name translates from Farsi as fortress breaker, and that name was not chosen carelessly. Iran's military establishment named this system with deliberate precision because it was designed from the outset with a single strategic purpose: to defeat layered air defense architecture, not to evade it through stealth, not to outrun it through hypersonic speed, though speed is a factor, to defeat it through a specific warhead design that exploits the fundamental mathematical constraints of any interceptor-based defense system. The Kheibar Shekan is a solid-fueled ballistic missile. That distinction matters enormously from an operational standpoint, and I want to make sure that is clearly understood. Liquid-fueled missile systems require preparation time. They require fueling procedures that take hours and that generate observable signatures. Satellite surveillance, aerial reconnaissance, signals intelligence, all of the tools that modern militaries use to provide warning time are optimized in part around detecting the preparation signatures of liquid-fueled launch operations. A solid-fueled system eliminates that window. The missile is stored in a launch-ready configuration. It can be transported, positioned, and fired in a fraction of the time. The warning window for a defense system collapses dramatically. And when you combine that compressed timeline with a range that puts all of Israeli territory within reach from Iranian soil, you begin to understand why this system has been a subject of serious concern in classified defense discussions long before it was used in combat. But the solid fuel and the range, while operationally significant, are not what made Haifa the strategic inflection point that it was. What made Haifa different, what sent the kind of signal that reverberates through defense ministries on every continent, was the cluster warhead payload. And I want to explain precisely why that matters, because this is where the tactical reality connects directly to strategic consequence. Conventional missile defense, the kind that Israel has built with Iron Dome, Arrow 2, and Arrow 3, and the kind that American forces deploy with Patriot and THAAD, operates on a fundamental logic. One incoming threat is tracked, its trajectory is calculated, an interceptor is fired, and the threat is neutralized before impact. That logic works. The success rates that Iron Dome has achieved against short-range rocket fire from Gaza are genuinely impressive by any technical standard. But that entire framework, the tracking, the calculation, the intercept, rests on the assumption of a single coherent incoming object, one trackable signature, one intercept solution, one outcome. Cluster warheads do not present a single coherent incoming object. At a designated altitude, the Kheibar Shekan's warhead separates, releasing multiple submunitions that spread across a wide area, each presenting its own tracking challenge, each requiring its own intercept solution, each demanding a finite and expensive interceptor round. A defense system that was managing one problem is now simultaneously managing several in a compressed time window, with resources that are limited by both cost and physical inventory. This is not a technological failure of Israeli or American defense systems. This is a deliberate exploitation of a structural constraint that exists in every interceptor-based defense architecture ever built. Iran's engineers understood that constraint and designed around it with discipline and precision. The strike on Haifa was not, from a military analytical perspective, primarily about the damage it inflicted, as serious as that damage was. It was a demonstration, a live, combat conditions demonstration of a capability that Iran had developed, tested, and held, ready for precisely this kind of strategic signaling moment. Every frame of footage that came out of that engagement was processed by intelligence agencies around the world. Every intercept attempt that fell short, every submunition that reached its destination, every gap in the coverage that the defense architecture revealed under pressure was cataloged, analyzed, and fed into threat assessments that will shape defense procurement decisions and operational doctrine for the next decade. In that sense, what happened over Haifa was simultaneously a military operation and a global intelligence event. And if you think the strategic consequences end with the immediate damage to Israeli infrastructure, stay with me, because the next phase of this story reaches considerably further. Let me give you the broader regional context, because no military event of this magnitude can be properly assessed in isolation. Iran's decision to deploy the Kheibar Shekan in this engagement was not an improvised response to battlefield pressure. It was a calculated, strategic choice made within a long-range doctrine that Iran's military establishment has been developing and refining for the better part of 4 decades. Iranian strategic doctrine has always operated from a clear-eyed acknowledgement of asymmetry. Iran cannot match the United States or Israel in conventional air power. It cannot match them in naval projection. It cannot match them in overall defense spending or in access to cutting-edge Western military technology. Iranian strategic planners accepted that reality early and built their entire military investment framework around a different question. Given our constraints, what capabilities can we develop that will impose the highest possible cost on any adversary who chooses to engage us militarily? The answer that Iranian doctrine arrived at was a sophisticated, diversified, and continuously upgraded missile and drone arsenal specifically engineered to defeat the defensive architectures that well-resourced adversaries build. The Kheibar Shekan is the current apex of that developmental logic. It is the product of decades of investment, reverse engineering, and operational learning built under comprehensive sanctions that denied Iran access to global technology markets, built by engineers who had to solve problems domestically that other countries solved by purchasing foreign components, and built with a singular purpose: to demonstrate to every potential adversary that Iran has closed the gap between offensive capability and defensive capacity in ways that change the strategic calculus of any military engagement. The international reaction to Haifa, much of which has occurred in classified briefings and back-channel diplomatic communications rather than in public statements, reflects the seriousness with which defense establishments around the world are processing this demonstration. When you talk to serious defense professionals, people who have spent careers studying threat assessments and force-on-force analysis, the question being asked right now is not whether Iran has demonstrated a significant capability. That question has been answered. The question being asked is what it means for the extended deterrence architecture that the United States has built across the Middle East and, by implication, in other theaters where similar missile defense systems are deployed. The Patriot batteries protecting American bases in the Gulf region operate on the same fundamental intercept logic as the Arrow systems that came under pressure over Haifa. THAAD deployments in South Korea and Guam face missile development programs in North Korea that have been closely watched for cluster munition advances. NATO missile defense infrastructure in Eastern Europe, deployed in part to address Iranian ballistic missile threats, now needs to be reassessed against a threat profile that includes cluster warhead payloads. What happened over one city in northern Israel has generated a strategic reassessment that spans multiple theaters and multiple alliance structures. That is the measure of the significance of what we witnessed. Now, I want to address something directly because I think it is important for a complete strategic assessment, and it is something that does not receive sufficient analytical attention in most public commentary. Iron Dome and the Arrow systems are not failures. Let me be precise about that. They are among the most technically sophisticated and operationally proven air defense systems in the world. In the success rates that Iron Dome has demonstrated over years of operational deployment against rocket fire represent genuine engineering achievement and genuine life-saving performance. What Haifa revealed is not that these systems are poorly designed. What Haifa revealed is that they are operating in an environment where the threat has evolved, where an adversary has specifically studied their architecture and engineered a weapon to stress their mathematical limits. That is the nature of the offense-defense competition that has driven military technology throughout history. An adversary identifies a capability gap, invests in closing it, and then tests the result under operational conditions. Iran did exactly that, and the result was a demonstration that has changed the terms of the competition. The response from the Israeli defense establishment, already underway in terms of accelerated procurement discussions and capability assessments, will be substantial. And the United States will be deeply engaged in that response because Israel's ability to maintain credible deterrence is directly connected to American strategic interests across the entire region. But what that response looks like, what timeline it operates on, and whether next-generation solutions like directed energy weapons can be matured and deployed fast enough to close the gap that Haifa revealed, these are questions that do not have comfortable answers in the near term. And that near-term gap is precisely where Iran's strategic calculation is focused. Stay with me because the full scope of what this means for American strategic positioning in the Middle East and for the decisions that will have to be made at the highest levels of national security leadership is where this analysis goes next. The economic dimension of the cluster warhead problem deserves precise attention because it is not peripheral to the strategic assessment, it is central to it. Every Arrow 3 interceptor costs approximately $3 million per round. Every Arrow 2 interceptor runs approximately $1 million. Iron Dome interceptors, the Tamir missiles, cost approximately $50,000 each. Against those costs, an Iranian ballistic missile equipped with cluster warheads, even accounting for the full development and production cost of a sophisticated solid-fueled system, represents a fundamentally asymmetric economic exchange. When a single incoming missile releases multiple submunitions, each requiring its own intercept attempt to fully neutralize the threat, the cost ratio shifts dramatically against the defender. The attacker is not trying to achieve a perfect strike rate. The attacker is trying to achieve an exchange ratio that exhausts defensive inventories faster than they can be replenished and that imposes financial costs that compound over time. This is not a new concept in military economics, but what is new is the degree to which Iran has operationalized it in a sophisticated, precision-capable delivery system that can reach targets across the entire region. Every defense planner operating in this theater is now running the inventory math and the replenishment math and asking a question that has no easy answer. How do we maintain credible layered defense against a threat profile that is specifically designed to make layered defense economically unsustainable over an extended engagement? That is the question that Haifa placed on the table, and the answer will determine the shape of military investment, alliance burden sharing, and deterrence strategy in this region for years to come.